Hello, my name is Matt Marchand, a library aide at the Blackstone Public Library, and I'm here to talk to you today about protecting yourself from fraud and scams. Let's talk about people who get scammed. For as long as people have been coveting the possessions of others, there have always been those who would go to great lengths of deceit to obtain what they want. And modern technology has just made this easier to give them access to victims. Many modern scams do, in fact, occur online, but there are others that take place through mail, over the phone, or in physical locations. Think for a moment. Can you recall being hit up by a scammer recently? If you can't, don't worry. We'll go through a few examples of that. Have you ever been the victim of some type of scam? If you have, you probably are already aware that, it can be pretty ruinous to your life and it can be a real pain to try to set things straight again. But we'll talk about ways going forward that you can avoid that. So, people who get scammed, it has very little to do with your age or your intelligence. Although you've probably heard the elderly get targeted a lot, or oh, that guy was not very smart, so of course he was a victim. A lot of times it has nothing to do with either of those things. Young people can very often be targets of scams, and very smart people can get caught as well. What it does have to do with is emotional state and awareness, and we're going to see lots of examples of that as I go through this discussion today. The thing with scamming and with security in general, information security in that for that point is that human beings are almost always the weakest link in any scam or fraud case. This is because most rational people, most day-to-day people just want to be helpful to each other. Most people like to hear good news, and because of these things, that often makes them vulnerable. Scammers and fraudsters know this and they know how to exploit this. And it's all a numbers game. The more traps they lay, the better their chances of catching a rabbit. I have a friend who works, I believe it was at he was at one of I think it was the Federal Bank in New York, one of the federal banks in New York. And he did a lot of information security there. And what he told me was back in the year 2018, uh, there were, I think it's every 1 minute, there's approximately 1 trillion scam related emails that go around worldwide. Now, that's trillion with a T. Okay. That means about, I don't know, maybe there's what, 8 billion people in the world. So about 125 every minute for every living and breathing human being on the planet. And that's just the ones that they know about. And that's only email. That doesn't include texts or any other methodologies of scams getting out there. So if you feel like you're getting bombarded with them, it's because you are. So when we look at the many different types of scams and fraud, you can pause this presentation and you can just take a look at through the list. And you may recognize some of these if you've ever seen them. If not, these are the kinds of things you should be on the be on the lookout for. The list goes far beyond just this, but these are some very common ones that are out there today. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of these common scams and the kinds of things you can do to avoid them. As we go through this, you're going to notice that there are some very common tactics that scammers will use over and over again. The good news about this is that there's a lot of easy ways to help prevent yourself or others that you know and love from becoming a victim. So the first kind we're going to talk about is what's called general unwanted communications, and this includes things called phishing and spoofing. These are typically the random emails, texts, or phone calls you're going to receive that prompt you to, click a link, press a button, press one on your phone to talk to somebody. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with anything that you have going on in your life. These types of scams are typically looking for your personal information or passwords. That's what we call phishing. Or to, in a lot of cases where they want you to click on a link, they're trying to install malware on your computer or maybe even your phone. These often will come in the guise of a reputable organization. It might be, it might look like it comes from Amazon or Netflix or Apple or the Internal Revenue Service. Um, and they usually, what they do is they contain some type of threat, or they try to generate a sense of urgency. Remember, I talked earlier about how these will play on your emotions. So what they're going to do is they're going to tell you something like, oh, your subscription is about to expire, or your order has been canceled, or you owe the IRS and we're going to send people to arrest you. uh, First of all, a lot of times these places are not going to reach out to you in this fashion. So the best advice you can have for this is always examine the links in these communications before you click on them. And if you aren't sure if it's actually from that organization, just don't click it. Get a loved one, have a friend who's more technically savvy, perhaps come take a look at it if you just aren't sure. Another way to avoid this kind of thing is don't text while you're tired and falling asleep. I admit I do this myself. Sometimes you're lying in bed, getting ready to fall asleep. You've got your phone up, you're texting, and then you nod off and you drop your phone and your thumb hits something in a text. You hit a link and whoops, well, now you've exposed yourself. So be very, very careful about doing that. And if they happen to reach out to you by phone, just hang up. So one common thing I've been asked is, well, how do I know that a URL or a web link is bad? Well, what I have here is this is like a sample URL that you might see when visiting a website. In this case, if you're looking at it, you kind of recognize it's Amazon.com. So what you need to do to try to determine if a URL or a web link is fake is there's 5 different parts to any given URL or web link. The first one is what's called the scheme, and you can see that highlighted in the red box there. All that is, that's just the protocol by which the URL and the browser will be talking to the web server. Not particularly important for this. The second part is what's called the subdomain or server. You've probably seen this a lot. People tell you to go to www or something like that. That's not a very important part of this either. The next part, which is usually looks like the name of the website you're going to itself, this is what's called the second level domain. This is important, and that's why it's highlighted in green. So you want to take a note of that. And then the next part is what's called the first level or the top level domain. That is also highlighted in green because that's important as well. And then the rest of the URL, which typically comes after that slash following the .com or the .whatever, that's all just a list of its directories, locators, encrypted information, lots of other data that you don't have to worry about necessarily too much. We just, in simple layman terms, we call that everything else. Okay. So the part that you're really concerned with, and now I've highlighted is the second level and the first level domain. And that's very commonly what are known as the website. And that's how you'll probably refer to that as, you walk around and talk to your friends or whatever. Those will be the things like Amazon.com or mass.gov or bu.edu and so forth and so on. So that's like, think of just that as the website. That's the piece you're looking at. And what it really is, if you look at the whole URL, you've got the scheme that we talked about, and then the slash slash, and you'll have that stuff that's the part of the server that I talked about, but that part in green, which is everything before that first single slash, those 2 parts right there, that is all that you're interested in. If that part is correct, then you should be okay to click on a link. But what you're really looking for there is look for misspellings, misplaced characters. Sometimes they will substitute letters for numbers. They might be using a really bizarre font style that doesn't match the rest of everything. Like in the example I'm putting down here, you can see, at the bottom there's http://. Now you have Amazon, but instead of the zero, instead of the O, there's a number 0 in its place. That's a bad URL, and it's probably going to take you somewhere you don't want to go. Do not click on that. Okay. Again, best advice, if you're not sure, don't click, ask a trusted friend or a loved one for help. Okay. And what I'm going to show you next is a real life example. This is something I received on my phone while I was actually putting this presentation together. If you take a look at this, it kind of looks like it's from Netflix, sort of. It's not really spelled correctly, and you can see that there's a lot of weird text in here. But of course, there's a link at the bottom. That's the part that's highlighted in blue. And you can see that it's trying to create some urgency for me. Renew my my subscription here to keep enjoying Netflix. But take a look at that the second and top level domains here. It looks like lnkd.in. What does that have to do with Netflix? Absolutely nothing. I mean, Netflix's website, if it was legit, would be netflix.com. So I know this is bogus. It has nothing to do with Netflix. I know I pay my subscription. There's no reason that I should be panicking here or that I should click on this. This text is getting deleted from my phone immediately. And if you get something like that, you should do the same. You've probably seen lots of these things that are telling you to, renew your subscription, or your subscription has expired, or your order's been canceled, things like I was saying earlier. Just don't click on these. Don't fall for this. Okay. The next type of scam is job or work from home scams. An example of this is you receive some kind of offer to do an easy work from home job, doing something that's very, very simple with a minimal time investment, and you can make, five to $10,000 a month. A very common one that I have seen is you get an offer to do something like stuffing envelopes. Okay. The scam here is that you don't just get the job. You have to pay for some startup kit, or you have to be given some special training, or you have to buy into a proven system before you get this job. Okay. First of all, you're never actually going to get any job. But if you do send them money, what's going to end up happening is you're probably going to get pressured to buy more advanced training or an upgraded work kit so you can make even more money. Or you may be asked for more personal invitations to join groups or get your friends involved so that, send your friends email addresses so we can get them involved in stuffing envelopes too, type of thing. I mean, look up the organization, right? If it, you know, check if they're known for scams or fraud. You can go to some place like Snopes.com. It's a common fraud site that you can look up to validate whether something is real or not. I mean, stop and think about it. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If I could actually make $10,000 a month stuffing envelopes at my dining room table for just a couple hours a day, do you think I would be here giving you this presentation? Wouldn't everybody else be doing it too? It's a scam. You don't fall for that kind of thing. Third type of scam I want to talk about today is called skimming. Skimming is an in-person physical type of scam that occurs at kiosks like ATMs, gas pumps, or other point of sale terminals. Think of places where you might stick your credit card or a bank card in. That's where skimming will occur. What skimming is a criminal, typically while nobody is around, will install some type of device on the machine that will record the information off of the magnetic stripe that's on your credit or debit or ATM card. Okay. What you want to do to prevent becoming the victim of a skimming scam, inspect the device first. Take a look at that gas pump or that ATM. Wiggle the card reader and see if it's loose. Okay. Look if there's any dangling wires or anything else unusual. If something looks wrong, don't use it. Okay. In the case of a gas pump, make sure you're using one that is clearly in sight of one of the station attendants or that's in visibility range of the security cameras. Look for those cameras that are up on the corners of the building, or those little black bubbles hanging down from under the gas pump canopy. Okay. In the case of ATMs, make sure you're using ones that are indoors in well lit locations if you can. A lot of times the ATMs have those little walk-in doors where you actually have to use your card to just gain access. Make sure, of course, make sure that the door lock doesn't have a skimmer on it as well. Okay. If you suspect anything odd at all, if you don't get a warm and fuzzy feeling before using the kiosk, don't use it. Contact the store or the branch owner or the manager or whatever. Let them know that something seems amiss with the machine. Okay. Another thing you can do is a lot of modern day credit cards, debit cards, ATM cards have a microchip built into them. You've probably noticed on many cards, there's a little gold rectangle with some lines through it. That's a chip that contains a lot of the identity information. It's a lot harder to skim off of a card that has one of those chips because that's where the data is stored uh, rather than on the magnetic stripe. Okay. This is an old one, but it's still around. It's called the sports expert scam. Okay, you most often are going to see these during football season, but it could theoretically happen with any sport at all. The way this scam works is that you'll receive a letter or an email containing a prediction for the winner in this week's game. And lo and behold, wow, it's true that this person got it right. Okay, well, so what? Anybody can predict a single game. But what happens is every week you receive a similar letter over the course of several weeks, and the winner is always correct. Now you're starting to scratch your head and, whoever's sending me this is onto something. They must know something about this, about football or about these teams, or this guy is some kind of like sports sage. And then what happens is you will receive a final letter, usually towards the end of the season, saying that to learn the next winner, you need to pay. Okay. And then I will send you my final prediction. Maybe it's for the Super Bowl or something. Okay. Here's the catch. Don't pay for this sage advice. And I will tell you why. Because the way this scam works, what they have done is, maybe halfway through the season, they sent a bunch of these letters out to, I'm going to say, a very large audience, or emails even, right? To a very large audience. Let's just throw out a number and say 100,000 people received these emails. Very easy to send emails these days. Remember what I said earlier about those 18 trillion? I'm sorry, not 18 trillion. That was 2018. 1 trillion emails per minute. So, yeah, be careful there. But what happens is the scammer sends there's his prediction out to 100,000 people. But what he does is half of those people receive an email saying that Team A is going to win, and the other half receive an email saying that Team B is going to win. Okay. So, well, obviously, one or the other is going to win. So, based on, if let's say Team A wins, well, what he does is he takes all the people he sent the Team B prediction off the list. So now he's got a pool of 50,000 people to send to, right? So now what he does the next week, he divides that group in half. And, he does the same thing for the next week's game. He sends, half of them to, for Team A, half of them to half of them say Team A is going to win. The other half say Team B is going to win. Okay. And of course, let's say Team A wins again. Well, now all those people have seen this guy predict the game twice, and this goes on and on and on for the rest of the season. And what ends up happening is toward the end of the season, he's got a very small pool of people. Maybe he's down to, like, let's say, I'm not going to do all the math in my head here, but let's say he's got maybe 50 people left who have seen this guy predict the winner, 8 to 10 times in a row now. So these 50 people think this guy is some kind of sage, right? So now he says, okay, so now for the next game, you've got to pay me $5,000 to get my next pick. So maybe one or more of these people falls for it. They send him the advice. Maybe he sends out a prediction. Maybe he doesn't. It doesn't matter. He's got your money at that point. And many folks are none the wiser for it. But that's how the sports expert scam works. If you start getting just these letters or emails about predicting winners, don't fall for it. He doesn't know. He does. There's no sports sage that's predicting these things ahead of time. It's just he's sending the winners to both, and he's picking from a pool of those, and eventually he's hoping he can catch some suckers at the end of the season. So. Then there's the you've won scam. Okay. You get some kind of communication indicating that you've won something. A lot of times this is a phone call. It could be cash. Maybe they're telling you you've won a vacation or you've won some other prize, whatever, a car or whatever. Okay. And they're really excited to get your prize to you, but they need some information from you and some form of payment because there are, fees or taxes or, customs and duties that need to be paid. I mean, first of all, think to yourself, did you even enter a contest or sweepstakes lately? Um, and it's, again, this is just one of those, if it's true, too good to be true, it probably is. I guarantee you, you haven't actually won anything. Ignore it. You haven't won anything. Don't give them your information because that's a path to having your identity stolen, and don't send them any money because you're never going to see it again. Uh, so that's what the you've won scam is. Next, we have impersonator scams, and there's lots of different types of impersonator scams, but the two most common ones that I've seen are what I call the tech support impersonator and the romance impersonator. Let's talk about the tech support impersonator scam first. So, what'll happen is somebody reaches out to you. Maybe it's by email or by a text or whatever. Sometimes it's just a pop up that appears on your screen while you're web browsing, and it's going to try to convince you you're having some type of virus or you've got some type of performance problem on your PC. Okay. Well, how do they know that? I mean, it's just some random thing that came up on the web or an email. They have no idea if there's any actual problem on your PC. But I guarantee you, whatever this communication is probably going to have some type of link or a phone number or something in it. Do not call it. Do not click the link. And some of them may go so far as to request remote access to your system so they can help you out. Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what they want to do is help you out. Um, do not give them access to your system. If they do, they will try to install some type of malware, and then they will, as the kiddies say, own your system. Okay. The other popular impersonator scam is romance. Remember, we talked about, how people like good news, people like to feel good, and how they get you is playing on emotions. So what ends up happening here is, you get reached out to by somebody on social media, whether it's Facebook or you know pick any of the other social media platforms out there, and they want to indicate that, oh boy, you're handsome or beautiful, I want to start a relationship with you. Okay. You may have some back and forth communications with them. In time, they begin professing their love, but stop and ask yourself, for some reason, you've never actually seen this person aside from maybe some still photos. You've never met in person. You've probably never heard their voice either. Um, but yet they're in love with you. And this is giving you a lot of feel good emotions, and then here's where they start to get you because now they're tugging on your heartstrings, and so now they're going to start asking you for money. Maybe it's for airfare, maybe it's for some emergency purchase, maybe they tell you their mom has gone into the hospital or something and is not doing well and they can't quite afford the hospital bill. Do not fall for this. I as much as you want to believe it, somebody there is not in love with you. They are after your money and they've been playing a long game to get it. And if you give up your credit card number or you send them a check somewhere, I promise you, you are never going to meet this person and your money is going to be gone. Okay. So those are two samples of impersonator scams. Be wary. Just, be cognizant that these things happen. Okay. Then there's the your grandkid scam. Okay. This is one that typically targets the elderly. Um, grandparents love their grandchildren, and as your grandchildren start to get older, they're getting out in the world, and now somebody reaches out and tells you that your grandkid is in some kind of trouble. Okay, maybe they're in jail. They're telling you they're in jail, or maybe they're being held hostage or something like that. They may even be pretending to be the grandchild themselves. Maybe you haven't seen them in a while, and you don't remember what their voice sounds like. Okay. And what they're telling you, like I said a moment ago, they need bail money, or they need an emergency room co-payment, or some other urgent need to avert disaster. Again, they're playing on your heartstrings, and they're going to ask you for your credit card number. They might ask you for cryptocurrency, or they want to, please, grandma, come meet me somewhere. I need your help. Don't fall for this. Ignore it. Okay. What you want to do, if you want to be safe, if you're really concerned that your grandchild is in trouble, if this is a phone call, hang up, call your grandchild back directly and verify that this is, hopefully you have their actual number. Call them back, verify they're actually in trouble. Grandma, I'm fine. I'm, hanging at the mall with my friends or whatever. Don't fall for this. Again, it's a play on your emotions, creating a sense of urgency that I talked about before, put you in a panic, get you off balance, and now you're a little more susceptible to falling for this kind of scam. Next one, unpleasant. It's called sextortion. Very often, minors are the targets of this kind of scam, but theoretically, it could happen to anyone. Basically, what this is, somebody earns your trust over time, and eventually starts asking for, compromising photos or videos. This could also kind of go along with that romance scam that we talked about earlier. People like to feel good. People like to feel that somebody loves them. Um, but this is just a bad idea in general, because what ends up happening is if you decide to send some photos of yourself, whatever, without all your clothes on or something, then all of a sudden this could take a bad turn really quickly. And then you're going to find that they're threatening to leverage this content that you shared, uh, as blackmail, or, for some other financial gain, something of that nature. Educate your kids. Do not engage in this behavior yourself. Okay. Even if it's somebody you actually know and love, I mean, I don't want to put a damper on things, but even good relationships can turn bad at some point, and then this person may have compromising, whether it's a photo or a video of you that they could use against you in the future. It's just, in general, from a pure security perspective, it's a bad idea. Okay. Banking and investment scams. Okay. Somebody reaches out to you, whether it's over the phone or through an email or whatever. They're claiming to be a, big time banker, broker, or some other investment representative. They're reaching out to you about some amazing investment opportunity, right? The red flags here are that they're guaranteeing you big returns, with no risk in a relatively short period of time. You can earn 50% on your money risk free in a month. Like, where do you earn those kind of returns? There's no bank that's going to give you that. And, risk free and high return do not go together. That just, for the most part, that doesn't happen. This is a scam. Okay. And then they start to create a sense of urgency around this too. They get you all excited about earning, big returns on your money, but you have to invest now. You got to get in the next, 24 to 48 hours. Otherwise, the window of opportunity for this is going to close. Okay. And they've Once you're in, you're in this investment, you decide you want your money back. It's too late, and you're going to find that whoever this is always has some mysterious excuse for not being able to get you your money back. Oh, well, this investment is locked up for a little while. Oh, just give it a little more time, it'll come back. And it was a scam, unfortunately. And again, this all comes back to that old adage: if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. If you give somebody like this your money, you are never going to see it again. And this is the last one I'm going to talk about in this presentation. It's general identity theft. Criminals are always trying to obtain your personal information to use it for their own ends. This allows them to open accounts for themselves in your name. It allows them to cause you reputational damage. They could blackmail you. They could try to exploit you in different ways. I mean, the main thing to do about this is just protect your information. If somebody reaches out to you, don't ever give them your information. If somebody calls you and says they're representing some organization, don't give them information that way. What you want to do is call the organization back. Call them at a number that you know is the organization. Look up go to the legitimate website, find the contact info. And another common thing people do is don't leave your information or documents lying around. Social security numbers, your Medicare card, your driver's license, your credit cards, your passport. Very common thing people do. People will write their passwords down on a sheet of paper and then leave it somewhere. You leave that stuff out, you're leaving yourself exposed for somebody to steal it. Okay. Also, any other documents or applications you might be filling out that contain this info, make sure it ends up in the correct hands. Don't leave it lying around. If you do that, you're just asking for trouble. Somebody nefarious will come along and they will take it, and they will use it against you. Um, Another thing to do is avoid doing personal and financial transactions. You know, I mentioned before, I'm here at the Blackstone Public Library. We have public computers here. Um, be careful about doing uh, transactions like that use your personal information in public spaces. Okay. Um, Especially when there's high visibility. A lot of people like to connect to the public Wi-Fi in an airport. Um, you know, that's a real easy way to get your information stolen if you're not using what's called a VPN. A VPN, I won't go too much into the technicals of it, but a VPN is very useful for encrypting your information as it travels from your computer over the internet to where it's going. Um, if you absolutely have to do these kind of things in public places or on public computers, a few things to make sure to protect your information. Make sure you log out of your accounts when you're finished, whether it's your email, whether it's your bank account, whether it's your insurance company, your brokerage firm, whatever. Log out and close the web page. That's a good way to make sure that nobody can get back and get into your account. The next thing is clear your browser history when you're on public computers. Just go up into the browsers. There's usually a menu on the side where you can go into the settings, you can look at the history, and you can clear out the pages that you've been to. I actually just thought of a bullet point I didn't put in this presentation. But one thing you really want to be careful of is a lot of times browsers, whether it's, Firefox or Chrome or Microsoft's Edge, they're just set up by default to ask you, do you want me to store your password? So you don't have to remember it. This is generally a bad idea, especially on a public computer, because if you leave that stuff on there, you might be thinking, "Oh yeah, I'm going to come back to the library tomorrow. I'll go look up my bank account again." Well, if you saved your username and password in there on that website for that website, anybody who uses that computer can go and use that now. So don't ever do that on a public computer, and I'd even be wary about doing it on a private computer too. If you need to save your password somewhere, use a special password like a password vault to store that kind of thing. The other thing to be aware of too is what I call a shoulder surfer. And this will happen in a public area. You're doing whatever your personal business is on the computer, but somebody is peeking over your shoulder looking at what you're doing. They may not grab everything, but they could grab information like, your name, your address, your phone number, other identifying information that you might be entering into the computer. So, just take a quick look around. If somebody's around you, don't enter the information, or cover the screen somehow, or minimize the window until they're gone and you're clear to do it again. Okay. So overall, what this What a lot of this comes down to, as I said, is just awareness. And there's some easy things to watch for. And I mentioned some of these already as we went through the presentation. So think of this kind of as a summary, okay? So if a call or an email or a text is starting to generate a sense of emergency or urgency or panic, check yourself. They're using high pressure tactics to get you upset, to think, oh my God, I got to take action now. And they want you to think with your heart and not your head. Okay. Like I said, just playing on emotions, don't let them get the best of you. Think with your brain. Okay. Watch for uncharacteristic behavior. My friend Lisa, she never sends emails to me. Why is she sending me one now asking me for access to my computer? Okay. If you see something that's out of the normal, you know, well, what I would probably do in this case is I would actually reach back out to Lisa, not by the email that she just sent me, but I would pick up the phone and I'd call her. I'd say, hey, Lisa, did you send me an email uh, to trying to access my computer for something? And then what you're probably actually going to do is you're going to alert her to the fact that, oh my God, Matt, my email's been hacked. And, then she can go fix that. Okay. Again, creating a sudden sense of excitement, doubt, or confusion. When somebody starts doing that, just, hang up the phone, close the email, take a deep breath, uh, get a grip on the situation. Okay. Another thing to watch for is being asked for information that has nothing to do with the situation that you're in. If let's say if I'm at the library and I'm getting a new library card and, they ask me for, I don't know, they ask me for my credit card number or my social security number there. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. What are you asking me for that for? You don't need that information. I just want a library card. You don't need access to my retirement funds or anything like that. So think about where you are and the kind of information that's being asked for. Okay. Another common one that I see is a lot of times when you're a patient in a doctor's office or a specialist office, look at those application forms. A lot of times they are looking, their form is going to ask you for your social security number. They don't need that. There's nothing financial going on there. I when I go to a doctor's office, if I see that on a form, I just leave it blank. Okay, and if they insist on giving it to you, uh, if they insist on getting that from you, I should say, um, I would seriously consider going to see another doctor. Okay. Another thing to watch for is when people ask you to pay in cryptocurrency. Okay. Cryptocurrency, you have probably heard, is a new form of it's well, new. I say that it's probably about 15 years old now, but it's a form of digital currency. It's not something you can hold. It's not a tangible object like money, coins, or dollar bills. It just exists out on the internet, so to speak. Um, People can create things called digital wallets and store their cryptocurrency. But it's also unregulated and it's not easy to track. And when it's gone, it's gone. There's no way to get it back. So if anybody is asking you to pay for something in cryptocurrency, that should be a red flag right there. Okay, you're probably getting scammed. Okay, some simple do's. Okay, enable what's called two-factor authentication or 2FA on your important accounts. You probably are doing this already. You just didn't know what it was called. But what two-factor authentication is, for years we've all been asked to enter a password into accounts. This is one factor, which is what we sometimes call in the security industry something you know. Okay. Um, a second factor might be something you have. Now, you've probably noticed, as you do things online, that you go to log in with a password and it says, okay, well, we're going to send you we're going to text you a code, or we're going to call you with a code. This is what's called a one-time pad or a one-time password. Okay. So in addition to the password, you have to enter this code. Okay. And I believe me, I know I feel the same agony you do. It's a pain in the butt, but it is a lot more secure than just a password. Okay. So particularly with your important accounts, things where, bank accounts, brokerage accounts, Medicare, anything like that. If you have the ability to do so, please, I'm begging you for your own security, enable that, that one-time pad, that second factor of authentication. Now, there's also a third type. It's a lot less common than the other ones, which is called something that you are, or biometric security. These would be things like fingerprints, or sometimes you've seen in the movies, somebody sticks their face up and they do a retina scan. Those things do actually exist, but that's the third factor. But typically, having any two of those working together is what's called two-factor authentication. For most of us mere mortals, that two-factor authentication is going to be the something the password, combined with the something that you have, the one-time code that will be given to you on your phone or whatever. Okay. I know it feels like a pain, but it is for your protection. Okay. As far as your passwords go, use strong, unique passwords on your accounts. Don't use passwords. You don't use the same password on multiple accounts. Okay. Um, use strong passwords. Try to use things that are 12 characters or more. You can mix letters and numbers, funny symbols. A lot of sites require this now. Your passwords don't have to be really bizarre combinations of letters, numbers, capitals, and lowercase letters. A really long password that is made up of something that could be just like a sentence or a series of words that's maybe 30 or 40 characters long is just as effective as well. Okay. Keep backups of your important data. Whether you do that locally on an external drive or whether you want to use cloud storage, you should always keep backups of your data. The reason for this is you've probably heard of something in the news, or maybe you've experienced yourself, called ransomware. Ransomware is basically, it's a type of malware that basically encrypts the entire contents of your computer. You will not be able to use it or access anything. It turns your laptop into what we lovingly call a brick. It's basically a useless paperweight at that point. Um, but if you have all your data backed up into the cloud, you won't have to even consider paying the hacker the ransom that they are asking for, thus the name ransomware. Okay. Always verify contacts. Whenever somebody reaches out to you because they want you to do something, or whatever, if they're creating that sense of urgency, asking you for money, asking you for information, hang up, call them back. Look up the number independently. Don't just use like the number or the email address that they initially sent to you. Go to the actual website, look at your documentation that you have, call the actual number, email the organization using a known uh, email address. Check the sources independently. Did you send me something? Is this legitimate? Ask them, right? And some simple don'ts, okay? When you're unsure or uncomfortable with a situation and you think it might be a scam, it's easiest to just say no or don't click. Hang up. Okay. Don't hand out your information if you don't know or trust the source. Okay. Don't give people you don't know access to your computer. If you do, anything that is on that computer or in your home network is going to be exposed and at risk. Okay. The main thing to remember is your information is yours and you control it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, for all the security technology we have, it is you who needs to protect your data. So thanks for attending. I hope you found this session helpful and enlightening, at least to some degree. Here's a few extra resources you can go look at. Uh, you can pause this presentation and jot these down and check these out. ftc.gov / pass it on has a lot of the information that I just shared with you here. Darkreading.com and bleepingcomputer.com. Those are sites that contain a lot of information about security and threats that are going on in the world. And the bottom site is, it's the actual FBI site. And if you follow that entire URL, that will give you some more information and resources about dealing with common scams and fraud and things of that nature. Thanks a lot for attending. I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you in the next video.